We'll see what this jury of 7 men and 5 women decide, and it's a big task for them, and to watch and
it is a big task. The prosecution also pointed out, though, that all this circumstantial evidence is absolutely admissible, and it is something you can absolutely take into account. And so she charged them with going home and making sure, can you sleep at night with this verdict? You do not have to say with 100% certainty, I know she killed this child and the evidence points to this, this, and this. If you can sleep at night with a first-degree murder verdict, then you go ahead and give that first-degree murder verdict as guilty. So she said it does not have to be 100% certainty.
And we'll see what the jury decides when they make that announcement coming. We don't know exactly how long this will be. I know you might be wondering, when are they going to announce it? When are they going to announce it? We're still waiting on the jury to come back in. We're waiting on Megan Boswell to come back in as well. And Gene Scott, we do see a part of his defense team, or her defense team, I believe, was the associate counsel was there, but they're not in the courtroom yet as well. So that we could have a little bit of a wait and delay on this.
Yeah, it looks like Gene Scott is concurring with the prosecution.
He is talking with William Harper there.
Maybe it's just, what did you have for breakfast?
we don't know what they're talking about. That's true. We can't hear that. But I don't know if we can see in a full screen if Megan Boswell's been brought into the courtroom at this point or not, if we can pull that back up. But again, you're watching live as we are awaiting the verdict in Megan Boswell's murder trial. 5 years. When this all began, you and I were both here when this all started unfolding. We followed it so closely. Never would have dreamed it would have taken us this long to get a solution in Evelyn's case.
I know. It has been a daunting 5 years, just in the fact that it involved a child. It was a very highly charged, emotionally charged case from the get-go. People were involved in the search, prayer vigils. There is a lot invested from this community.
A lot of community from Evelyn's army, just in the fall.
How we roll, basically. And I want to talk a little bit about Evelyn's law. Passed in 2021, this law came out of this case because it took so long. We believe, and we don't know the timeline
we don't know exactly, but it had been a while.
The prosecution thought between December 3rd and December 8th was the last time this little girl was seen alive. So we know she missed a child well visit on December 5th. It was February before she was reported missing because she put off her family members for only so long. She said, the baby's daddy has it, who was not the baby's daddy.
Right.
My mother has the child. Then
many stories. Always an answer of different places, and it really changed in a lot of different directions.
And finally, a family member said, we've had enough. We're going to report her missing. And that's when the Amber Alert went out. So what came from this? Evelyn's law in 2021. It was passed because you cannot wait an unreasonable amount of time now to report a child missing because of the fact that they are in danger, because of the fact that they could, if they wander off, there are just so many things that could happen to them within that period of time. So now you can get up to a year in jail, a $2,500 fine.
That's for a child under the age of 12.
A child under the age of 12, because they want to rule out runaways. Right. And, once you get up to a certain point, you could be at a friend's house, other factors. So they want to make sure that in this case, she would at least have known she was looking at a year's jail time, which was not the case at that time.
And now that is the Evelyn Boswell law, which was carried by local legislators, pardon me,
in 2021, yes.
So we're still waiting to see what happens. This is can be a lengthy time as we wait for the courtroom to come back in, and what will happen. And the judge will, the way we understand it, the jury will publish that finding to the judge and will announce them as typical would happen. We just will not be able to hear that. We will relay that through our system to you to tell you what it is. Again, that first question is first-degree murder, and the 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated child abuse, and aggravated child neglect, tampering with evidence, a host of false reporting. That's where those stories of where the child was here and there, and all the stories of every time she interacted with law enforcement, it seemed like there was a different explanation of where the body might be, where the child may be, who she may be with. So we have several pages of those. And then, of course, the failure to report a death of circumstances and abuse of a corpse all in that as well. So 19 counts that we'll make our way through once they start to announce those. Anything from Liam?
So I just checked in with him. He said we're still waiting for the jury to come in. And obviously, we're still waiting on Megan Boswell to come in. So this could be a little bit of a wait, but hang with us, folks, because we do want to make sure that we bring it to you as soon as the jurors come in.
And also, we talked about the response that we've had here.
Do you see something?
Okay, Kaylee was talking to us from the control room. We'll get to that in just a second, Kaylee. Thank you. We are wanting to make sure
And
the
just so
community
the
gets
control room knows, I am plugged into Liam. I cannot hear you. So if you need to say anything, say it to Preston.
little TV lingo here. The back, so you would normally see. I believe we're about to see. There's Megan Boswell entering the courtroom. She is walking in, and what I was getting to is the fact that the interest we've seen here locally, but also just from what we've seen in streaming this, and I know we're streaming online right now, the amount of attention that this has gathered, not just here in the Tri-Cities and our surrounding area, but across the country. And I've seen people watching from even across the world and commenting on following what's happening with this case, just how these cases spark so much interest in people.
Absolutely. A child is gone. A child will never turn 3. It is just never turn 2.
Right.
So it is just an emotionally charged case. And to see some of the things she has said, it has just been mind-boggling for her. Anyway, I'm not judging. I'm just saying
we've watched it along the way.
Very difficult to watch and very frustrating to watch. I can say that as a mother, just very frustrating.
And I think you could even see the difficulty in some of the witnesses and they're going through the case and what all they were talking about. These are professionals that deal with this, but it was difficult to cover some of this as well as we went through, and they were testifying throughout this trial.
Yeah, that's right. And then obviously they had to hold up the evidence, the onesie that baby Evelyn was found in, the tinfoil that was found smashed against her face. It was just so graphic, and it just brought up a lot.
And folks. Speaking of evidence, we talked about a lot of it being circumstantial, and I think we do have our sound from our legal analyst, Julie Cantor, who's a former prosecutor and defense attorney, not connected to this case, but talking about circumstantial evidence and how this can play a factor in this as we wait for the verdict. If we could keep the courtroom shut up, that would be great, but we can listen to what Julie had to tell us when it came to circumstantial evidence being presented into this type of a trial.
I know a lot of people want to throw the book at Megan Boswell, but did the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this little girl was murdered at the hands of Megan Boswell?
I think they've presented a very strong circumstantial case, and in the jury instructions that the jury members receive, they will read that the law treats circumstantial evidence as admissible. It can be just as reliable as an eyewitness who saw something happen. I think the state has weaved a very strong web of guilt around everything that occurred leading up to Evelyn's body being found. Now, the expert witness testimony that came in yesterday from the medical examiners may very well create doubt with some jurors.
And we're watching right now as that looks like they are standing. That may mean the jury is likely coming into the courtroom. We are waiting on a verdict. This is kind of the moment that the Tri-Cities have been waiting on for some time now, is the verdict announcement in the Megan Boswell murder trial. Of course, the jury had not been brought in. Now Megan is in the courtroom. Now the jury would come in at this point in time. So.
And I just want to let people know, if they're just joining us, Preston, here's how this is working. The judge has asked that we do not have live stream audio of the jury reading the verdicts, because he wants to make sure that he protects their identities, and he does not want their voice heard of the jury foreman. So what we have done is I have Liam Bridgman on the phone right now. He's in the media room.
He's in a separate room. He's not in the courtroom.
He's not in the courtroom. He's not allowed to have a phone in the courtroom. He is in a media room where he is listening to the verdict being read aloud. That is what is supposed to happen. The judge is supposed to allow us to unmute our camera so that we can hear, so that he can hear it.
He's watching on a separate feed. The technical side of this, Liam in the media room is watching on a separate feed, separate from what you're watching this. There's one camera feeding out. Everybody, wherever you're watching it from,
you'll be watching it silent.
It will be watching in silent. And then so we are relaying it's a little unorthodox to how you would normally see this happen, but it's the best way we can get it to you as it is announced in court. And then what the judge will then, once for media purposes, is going to announce it, but we're going to relay it through Liam, and then
we
we'll
do have permission.
One by one.
Yes, one by one. So we do have permission, though, to show Megan Boswell, so that if you watch the live stream, you'll be able to see her reactions. You can listen to us and watch the live stream.
You're going to see her, and,
so that you
basically
can see
what the camera is changing to here. That is kind of how. Now she'll stand when it comes time to read the verdict, but that it will be the shot that we will have. Is of Megan Boswell. Of course, the first one is first-degree murder, and then the two felony murder charges.
One for aggravated child abuse felony murder, aggravated child neglect felony murder. So 2 felony murder charges but for different things.
Different circumstances surrounding that of how you can find that. Then there's the aggravated child abuse and child neglect charges, which can in their own carry very lengthy sentences.
Absolutely.
Just if that were the only thing we were dealing with here, those can, if a conviction there can lead to long-term sentences under state law there. And then of course, tampering with evidence and false report are not quite as lengthy times in jail for those. But the top of that docket or the top of the indictment is definitely the ones that a lot of folks are curious about.
All right. You keep talking, Preston. I'm going to check in with Liam and just see if he can give us any idea.
So this is
all right. Maybe a few more minutes, according to Defense Attorney Gene Scott.
Okay, so we are waiting to see, once they come in, the jury, they'll ask them to publish the verdict, and oftentimes they'll take the verdict over to the judge. He will look at it, send it back over, and the foreman then will publish their findings. And then after it's over, they will poll the jury. If they see them doing that, they'll go through and ask them, is juror number 1, number 2, is this your finding? So we can see that happen. But that's typically after they get through all of those 2019 and count indictments there. So,
and we're going to pop that up on the bottom of your screen. You're going to be
Yes.
able to see
to follow along
charge
where
by
we are,
charge.
and you'll know what the verdict is and what it is as we're going through this. We have it built in so that you can see what that decision was as we go through it. So you're not having to try to keep track at home where we are, but as we will announce those as they're announced in court. So,
all right, the jury or the courtroom is standing, so that means the jury is being brought in.
Definitely some tense moments in that courtroom. A lot of folks in the community wants to know what happens with Evelyn Boswell and Megan Boswell's murder trial. So the verdict is in. If you have just joined us right now, we are waiting on this to be announced, and then as that comes, we will relay that to you of what is decided. So once the jury is in, they'll ask them if they have reached a verdict. We were just talking in the newsroom a moment ago. The jury had not asked any questions. A lot of times we see in a case like this, they'll come back and ask the judge a legal question or this, that. We hadn't heard from them. They were out roughly 5 hours, and we never heard from them. They did 3 hours yesterday and not quite 2 this morning.
Yeah, and that is typical where a juror would come in and ask a question. Wait, I need to clarify this. But honestly, the judge has been so thorough in this case that I feel like his little booklet was not so little.
It was 81 pages.
He outlined exactly how this needs to be handled and how they need to discuss this and the burden of proof that needs to be met and all that. It was, here it goes.
All right, so we are zooming in now. We are waiting. So this is, again, we won't be able to hear the sound from the courtroom. Our camera there is muted so that we don't hear the jury foreman talking. But the judge will be talking with the jury at this point. And we can stay full on the courtroom if you want to.
Hold on. Guilty of first-degree murder.
Guilty on first-degree murder. There's your first verdict is in. Guilty on first-degree murder. The next one we'll go down to will be felony murder. Waiting on this to be announced. Of course, there is the we don't have audio from the courtroom while the
jury find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Okay.
Guilty of first. So we're still waiting on that one. We have several more counts to go here, but that is the big one there.
Okay, each juror is raising their right hand.
That is
to swear that they all agree. Guilty of count 2.
Count
guilty
2, that is felony
count
murder.
3.
Count 3 is felony murder. That's the 2 felony murders for aggravated child abuse and aggravated child neglect. So we have 3 murder convictions so far.
Guilty of aggravated child abuse.
Aggravated child abuse. And then the next one we're waiting on is count 5. That is aggravated child neglect. So far, we have 3 murder convictions and an aggravated child abuse conviction right now, waiting on the decision.
So now they're swearing that they all agreed to that.
So
count 5, here we go.
This will be aggravated child neglect.
Guilty of aggravated child neglect.
So far, all guilty verdicts right now. Count 5. The next one we'll wait on will be that tampering with evidence. altering or destroying, concealing evidence with the intent, ability to find that. It's count 6 in this indictment. So far, it's been all guilty verdicts at this point.
And now all the jurors are individually raising their right hands to swear that they agree with that verdict. This is happening with each one.
Again, we can't hear the jury foreman.
Count 6, tampering with evidence. Guilty.
Guilty. Now we have a host of false reports, count 7 through 17. So about 10 of these we will see.
Okay, so once again, the jurors are all raising their right hands to swear that they all reach the same verdict. Count 7, false reporting. Guilty. She's been assessed a fine.
Okay. Another false report charge. These next several here will be false reporting.
All right, here we go. Count 8, more false reporting. Guilty. Don't forget, she told multiple stories.
Many stories throughout this. If you're just tuning in, we do have a first-degree murder conviction and 2 felony murder convictions for Megan Boswell. So far, all guilty verdicts as we make our way through this indictment. We're waiting on count
Each
number
juror
9.
has raised their right hand for every count thus far.
So you had the unanimous decision, a decision of 7 men and 5 women.
Count 9, false reporting. Guilty.
We'll have another
And they
false
have
report.
assessed a fine,
That's gonna. This will
which
probably
they're not giving yet.
that will come as that the sentencing phase. Now the jury will be involved in the sentencing phase in the first degree murder portion of this. We heard the judge telling them that they'll move into that after this. So that'll be the next task for this jury.
Count 10, false reporting. Guilty.
All right. That was from statements she made on February 18th of 2020 is what that count in particular was related to. We're looking to another false reporting here from statements she made on February 19th.
Count 11, false reporting. Guilty.
Guilty there on false reporting. We have a couple of more false report charges there. Again, Megan Boswell has been found guilty of first degree murder and 2 felony murders, guilty of every count in the indictment thus far. We're still making our way through these false reports. This is a charge from count 12 is from February
Count
the
12,
20th.
false reporting. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
And there we go. We'll have another one coming up as well, also from something on or about February 20th of 2020. Each of these different times that she was interacting has led to a specific charge in this case. Watching Megan Boswell, who's been...
Count 13, false reporting. Guilty.
Again, we are not hearing the jury foreman. We're getting this relayed to us through our Liam Bridgman, who's in a media room. The all audio coming from the courtroom is muted right now.
Count 14, false reporting. Guilty.
Also from the incident there on February the 20th of 2020. We have another false reporting charge as well. This is related to our conversations with the TBI and Sullivan County Sheriff's Office. Some of these were some of the videos we
Count
saw.
15, false reporting. Guilty.
Another one on count 16. That is the false reporting charge. And reality appears to be setting in a little bit there for Megan Boswell. She's been crying since that first degree murder conviction was announced. Again, first degree murder, guilty. 2 counts of felony murder, guilty. We have been guilty all the way down so far. We've made our way to count 16 in this indictment.
Count 16, false report. Guilty.
Got one more false report charge, then we'll move on to the other 2 remaining charges in this case. This is not a death penalty case. They did seek life in prison, so there will not be a death penalty, capital punishment decision in this. The state did not choose to go after that in this case, so it is a life in prison or with or without parole.
Count 17, false report. Guilty.
All right, so that is guilty on all false report charges. You may remember at the start of the trial, they did drop one of those false reports. There was originally a count 18, a false report that was dropped. So I believe now the next charge in this we should be hearing would be abuse of a corpse.
Count 18. Oh, yes. Count 19. Abuse of a corpse.
18 was pulled, so we're at
Guilty.
19 in the indictment. So we are, one more charge here would be failure to report a death under suspicion, unusual or unnatural circumstances. We count 20 of the total indictment. This one dates back to when
Count 20. Failure to report a death under suspicious, unusual, or unnatural circumstances. Guilty.
That is it. Guilty on all charges, all 19 counts. A complete decision there from that jury of 7 men and 5 women. Megan Boswell convicted on every count that she was charged with, including that big one of first-degree murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. Now looking at life in prison. The question is, will she have a chance at parole after serving 51 years? But life in prison.
So right now the judge is asking if either side would like to pull the jurors in this case. It looks like it's being declined.
And in that case, where they would go through and ask juror number 1, number 2, is this your decision? Is this your decision? And ask them all if that is what is happening. So it looks like the defense attorney is going to make some questions there. Again, we can't hear what is happening. I'm not sure when our audio will be allowed to be turned back on in the courtroom. As soon as we're allowed to turn that sound back on, we'll take you in there and listen into what's happening in that courtroom. And Judge Jim Goodwin's.
The jurors are being dismissed currently, temporarily. I believe the sentencing phase is happening.
The sentencing phase will come. He did tell them that if that was in his instructions yesterday, that if they did find guilty on first-degree murder, we would immediately go into a sentencing phase. That'll be the next job that they have to do in this. So they'll begin the sentencing phase on that first-degree murder conviction. So we'll wait and see how that happens. We could be back with you today and on however long it takes them to make that decision. But right now, we imagine the judge will publish those findings. We may be able to hear into the courtroom at this point in time. But again, Megan Boswell, you see on your screen right there, guilty on all 19 counts, including that first-degree murder and 2 felony murder convictions.
He's reading the charges again. Guilty on first-degree murder, guilty on felony murder, aggravated child abuse, guilty on felony murder, aggravated child neglect.
We can hear it.
Okay. Let's
The
listen.
jury of your peers having found you guilty of first-degree murder and the perpetration of a felony. It's a judgment of this court. You are guilty. And count 4, the judgment of your peers having found you guilty of aggravated child abuse. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 5, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of aggravated child neglect. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 6, the jury of your peers having found you guilty of tampering with evidence. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 7, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 8, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 9, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 10, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 11, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 12, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. Count 13, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. Count 14, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 15, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 16, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 17, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And count 19, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of abuse of a corpse. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. And in count 20, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of failure to report a death under suspicious, unusual, or unnatural circumstances. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. In counts 4 through 20, the jury did not assess the fine, so there'll be no fine assessed in those counts. Now we'll be in recess about 15 minutes.
Thank you. Court stands in recess.
And that was Judge Jim Goodwin reading the convictions again, all 19 charges against Megan Boswell. As we were just saying, she heard the jury tell it to her, then she heard the judge tell it to her 19 times. She is guilty in the death and the murder of her baby Evelyn.
So they have dismissed the jury temporarily. They will be brought back in because there is going to be an announcement of sentencing today because it is the highest.
The first degree murder case, the jury is involved in the sentencing in that case. So we'll see how this continues to play out, the next steps in this case, and where we are. But again, 19 convictions for Megan Boswell. First degree murder, carries life in prison. They did not seek the death penalty in this case, so the jury will be involved in that decision and what they recommend with whether she has a chance to get parole after 51 years.
I'm going to check in with Liam here, Preston,
Okay.
because I want to know how long they're going to be out. Should we stay live on air? If so, we will certainly be live here for you. We'll keep you posted. Of course, you can watch our live stream on YouTube and on Facebook.
We're being told 15 minutes, I believe
Okay.
is what we're. So just for clarification to the control room, 15 minutes they're coming back with that, or 15 minutes, do we know what that 15 minutes is?
I think it's 15 minutes until they come back.
Okay.
And so we will be live for you. We're going to wait right here and make sure that we bring you that sentencing live. You can also watch it on our YouTube page and on Facebook and on our website.
We will, the immense amount of attention and an interest in this, we want to make sure that you have that as soon as it's announced. We will have that for you. A big question now, that jury, and they may already have that answer. They may have worked that out, and when they came back with their verdict, they may know what their answer is going to be, and it may not take them very long at all. That'll be the next question, how this works out.
Yeah, so we'll hang tight right here and bring it to you live as soon as we get that information on sentencing. In the meantime, we're going to send it back to programming, but don't forget to stay with us live on air at WCYB.com, our YouTube page, and on Facebook.
And we will be back with you as soon as they are back in that courtroom right here on the air. And of course, you can get the complete coverage at WCYB.com, our YouTube, Facebook pages, and social media pages as well. Complete coverage throughout the day here on the air and online as we continue to follow now the conviction of Megan Boswell. First degree murder, all 19 charges guilty for Megan Boswell. We'll find out the sentencing coming up. For now, we're going back to regular programming for just a bit.
Mr. Scott, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
We need to bring the defendant in.
If we're prepared to see witnesses right now, we have a witness still on the way. She's not far away, hopefully.
Well, the state will go first and then.
I don't think it's gonna help much. Draw it out.
Yeah, well, yeah, we talked about that.
Verdicts we heard the jurors through the phone, thanks to Liam Bridgman. Megan Boswell now being brought into the court.
A now convicted murderer in the death of her daughter, Evelyn. She's about to learn from the jury of 7 men and 5 women if they are recommending that she has the ability to have parole after 51 years. Tennessee, this is not a death penalty case. The prosecution did not choose to seek the death penalty in this case.
All right, let's take a
Let's listen.
listen.
So again, we're back on the air right now watching the lawyers, prosecution defense meeting with Judge Jim Goodwin there on the sidebar. We're about to enter the sentencing phase of the Megan Boswell trial. Again, 19 convictions, first-degree murder, felony murder, 2 counts of that. Also aggravated child abuse, aggravated child neglect. Is guilty all the way down, tampering with evidence, those host of false reporting charges for all those stories that she came up with to try to explain where her baby was, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and then also the charge for not reporting a death. The jury is now coming back into the courtroom. It appears that's why they're all standing.
You may be seated. Thank you.
All right, General.
Judge, stay with introduce it. I'm sorry.
You can do an opening statement if you'd like to.
Okay, no, I stay with the opening statement.
Do you have an opening?
I do.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, although I may not agree with your verdict, I respect your verdict. I respect you. I thank you for your time. And I have one more thing to ask you. You have to make a decision now, and that decision is it's going to mean the difference. If you sentence Megan Boswell to life in prison, she'll be released when she is probably 69 years old. That'll be 8. She's been in jail. You probably realize she has been in jail since she was 18 years old. She went to jail February the 25th of 2020, and she hasn't been released. So with that said, if you give her a life sentence, it would be 51 years. That's what I'm asking you to do. If you give her a life without sentence, she will never be released from prison. That's the difference. So it'd be the difference between her being released at what I believe would be 69, 70 years old, or never being released. In doing this process, and Judge Goodwin will read you some very short jury instructions comparative to what you heard yesterday. You look at statutory aggravating factors and mitigating factors. In this case, the state will submit the age of the child as the aggravating factor. Our mitigating factors, we've listed several of those. They include no significant criminal history, her youth and age at the time the offense was committed. She was 17 when she had Evelyn. She was 18 when Evelyn died. You'll hear more about her unstable and chaotic home life. You'll hear from her mother, Angela Boswell. She's here today. You'll hear from Angela about domestic violence that Megan witnessed between her parents. You'll hear from Angela about drug use that Megan witnessed her parents engage in. You also hear about her schooling. It wasn't seamless, and how one of her primary role models was her grandfather, Tommy Boswell's father. He died when I think she was 11 or 12 years old. You'll hear that. And finally, you'll hear a little bit about her younger siblings, Elijah and Charlotte. Elijah has a disability that Megan has looked after him and tried to help take care of him. And then you're also feel free to look at any other thing you've heard in the proof and making that decision as far as mitigating factor. Anything else you've heard in all the proof from any of the witnesses, and also you'll probably hear from Gail Kite. You've heard from her once before, but you'll hear a little bit more from her about the shape Megan was in when she came into her home, and you'll hear from we expect to call Mary Boswell. She is Megan's grandmother. I think most of you recognize the name of Mommy at this point. You'll hear from her and what she witnessed and her participation in raising Megan. So it's a hard decision. It's not a light decision. You've made a hard decision already. And it's my hope that after you see this, you will come to the conclusion that maybe at 69 years old, it would be fair for her to be released from prison.
All right. General proof.
Yes, Judge. At this time, the state will produce a copy of birth certificate of Evelyn Boswell.
All right. That'll be exhibit 262. We want to keep the exhibits in sequential numbers, but I've started a new sheet for the sentencing part. It'll be exhibit 262. Any other proof, John?
No, Judge. That's state address.
All right. Mr. Scott.
Judge, we call Angel Boswell. Angel Boswell.
Raise your right hand, man. State your name for me.
Angela Boswell.
You solemnly swear affirm testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and but the truth, man. Have a seat. If you'll pull the microphone down and talk straight into that microphone. Actually, you know what? I need to switch these.
to go, Judge. Right. Ma'am, state your name for the record.
Angela Boswell.
You are Megan Boswell's mother.
I am.
Ms. Boswell, you know the purpose of being here today.
I do.
I want to ask you some about Megan's home life and growing up, but I guess I want to ask you first a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
And I'm asking you these questions, Ms. Boswell. I'm not trying to embarrass you or
No,
test any
no,
of these
sir.
questions.
No.
You married Tommy Boswell when you were how old?
First time 15.
You speak into that microphone just a little more, please.
The first time 15.
And when did you become pregnant with your first child with him?
I had my first in April and turned 16 in July.
Okay, and who was that child?
Tommy Jr.
And then you had Megan at some point. How old were you when you had Megan?
There's 8 years difference. I was almost 24.
It's okay. So let's talk about Megan's life growing up. Would it be fair to say that during her lifetime, she's witnessed drug use between you and her father?
Yes.
What type of drugs?
Opiates, mainly.
Scoot up or speak into that so the jury can hear you.
Opiates, mainly.
Did that drug use lead to other problems?
Yeah. Arguments, fighting, yes.
Okay. You say there
Strife
strife.
is what it brings, yes. Nonstop.
Is that something that went on pretty much her entire childhood
Yeah.
growing up?
Yeah, from the time she was pretty little, yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Good. Now, did she witness fights between you and her father?
Yes.
Okay. I think at some point her father was convicted of aggravated assault and kidnapping.
Yes.
Were you the victim in that?
Yes. Mm.
Do you remember ever taking Megan to any NAAA meetings with you?
Yes, I did.
How old was she when you did that?
She was probably about 7 or 8. First ones I started taking her to. 7 or 8, 8 or 9, somewhere around in there.
Does she, due to the strife in your home, was she raised by her grandparents to some degree?
Yes.
Okay, what were their names?
Mary and Danny Boswell.
Mary Boswell, would that be who's known as a mommy?
Yes.
These problems, do you feel that it's partly your fault, the problems Megan's experienced?
No, absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And unfortunately, your problems, that they went on up into, we saw a video in here of you being brought down from the jail to talk with her in 2020.
Yeah.
So even up until the time she went to jail, you were in and out of jail.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I've been.
Have you been convicted of numerous crimes?
Yes.
Now, have you managed to straighten up at this point?
I have, yes.
You're hoping to?
Yes, I pray every day and just, to do my best and try. I've learned the importance of a mother's role, but not for Megan, I didn't.
All right.
I failed her on that miserably.
And you're here asking the jury to give her a sentence of life as opposed to life without.
It's Maggie is at her core. She's a generous, kind person. And through all Maggie's went through, Maggie still has potential. She was trying so hard. She didn't repeat my mistakes. Maggie learned from my mistakes. She was trying to do better with Eve. She wasn't repeating. I think she got saddled with, and just because of my mistakes that she did those, and that was not it. That was not the case with Evelyn.
Would it be fair to say she didn't have a good role model for the mothers?
No, she did not.
Answer any of Ms. Massengill or Mr. Harper's questions.
I don't have any questions, Judge.
Thank you, Megan.
Judge, at this time, I have some judgments of conviction of Tommy Boswell. I'd like to put in by agreement with Mr. Harper.
No objection, Judge.
Okay. I'd ask these to be made the next 4 exhibits.
Mr. Scott, I want to enter in case number 61078 as exhibit 263. And the other 3 pages are 3 counts of the same case. So I'll make that a collective 263.
What is that case number, Your Honor?
62497. Yeah, the first page is 263, case 61078, and case 62497. Those 3 pages, 263. All right.
Your Honor, this we call Gail Kite. Kite.
It's KYTE.
I believe so, Your Honor. I'll have her spell it. Just, I think she was a witness in the trial, but I'll go back to it.
Raise your right hand and state your name, please.
Gail Kite.
Ms. Kite, you solemnly swear from testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, now.
I do.
Speak into that microphone.
Ms. Kite, good morning.
Good morning.
Just so I make sure here, spelling your last name, is it K-Y-T-E?
It is.
And Ms. Kite, you've previously testified in this hearing as state's witness. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, thank you for coming back for this part of it. I know Ms. Boswell appreciates that. How long have you been working in foster care?
15 years.
Do you remember when Megan Boswell came to you?
I do.
Do you recall what kind of shape she was in or state?
She was in bad shape. She was one of the worst children that I'd brought in as far as neglect.
What do you mean by that?
She was very malnourished. She's very skinny. Her hair was matted to her head with lice. Impossible to even get a comb through.
Okay. Well, when she came to you, were you given any background? I imagine in foster care, you're given background or information of where this child is coming from. Were you giving any of that?
I was.
And what were you preparing for?
In the intake papers, it mentioned trauma. It mentioned rape.
Did it give you any background or any information about her family background or makeup?
Not really.
Now, you said she came to you with lice. What did you do to try to help Megan?
Well, I took her to a beauty shop because there was no way to even begin to get a comb through. It was horrible. The beauty shop wouldn't touch it. They told me I offered to pay him $100 to go out back to cut her hair. And they said that they couldn't do it. Finally, the agency that we were with found a beautician that met me at a church that was willing to come in and give Megan a haircut. They gave her a bob, which looked really cute on her. But even after that we could get a comb through, it took close to 3 weeks, maybe a month, to get rid of the lice. Were just so bad. I had to get prescription medicine from the doctor. We got 2 bottles of that. I bought the comb that you run through that's supposed to kill the lice. And I know I practically traumatized the poor child because we'd go out on the porch and I'd run that comb through trying to make sure we got all the lice, and she'd sit there and tears would run down her hair. She got tired of me. It wasn't a pleasant situation. And then even when you do that, you still got to go through, you've got to thoroughly clean the bedding. Everything in the room has to be taken down, washed in hot water. But it was a rough time for her, very rough.
And you may have said, but she came to you how old?
She was 17 years old.
She was pregnant.
17, pregnant, scared, didn't have a place to go.
And you believe that she had been raped or violently sexually assaulted. Were you given any background or information about her family, her mom and her dad?
I knew Mom was in and out of jail, and I knew her daddy owned a business.
Okay. Were you able to come to the opinion that she essentially came from a dysfunctional family?
I did.
Okay. And how long did she stay with you?
She stayed 4 months. When she came in, we got to work, got rid of the lice, got her registered for school. Where she was pregnant, she chose to do online schooling. She worked really hard getting her diploma. If a test didn't go right, she was on the phone the next day with the counselor getting it reset. I never had any problems trying to get her to do her schoolwork or anything. She hung with it.
She ever caused you any problems, disciplinary wise or anything like that?
No.
Never?
No.
And did she seem to be thriving in a structured environment?
She did. She did.
Was she making friends?
She did.
Did she seem to be progressing and coming out of the state she was in when she came to you?
She very much so.
And she was with you for 4 months. Did you form a bond with her?
Oh, I did. We took up together immediately. It was during the winter. She learned me how to play card games. Winter days, we'd sit there and we'd play. Baby'd sleep, we'd play cards. But we formed a bond.
Did you take her to doctor's appointments?
I did.
How did she seem to feel about becoming a mother?
She was very excited.
Did you have conversations with her about that?
I did.
Did she seem to fully understand her roles and responsibilities of what was going to be required of her?
She did. Megan practically raised her younger sister Charlotte and her brother Elijah. She had plenty of experience with younger children.
How did you know that?
Well, mostly from conversations with Megan, and just I could tell by the way she took care of Evelyn at the house. You know, she knew how to heat bottles. She knew how to change the diapers. She got up when the baby cried.
Did you ever have to tell her to do those things?
No, me and my husband never once woke up those 4 months when Evelyn woke up in the middle of the night. Megan would take care of her very well.
And I asked you, and I want to clarify that, if you ever took her to doctor's appointments, she was with you when she was with you. She came to you pregnant. Did you go to the prenatal appointments?
I did.
And did you go to follow-up appointments with Evelyn's pediatrician?
I did.
Okay. So you were involved through the whole process, really?
Those 4 months, yes.
Okay. At some point in time, was Megan taken from your home and placed back somewhere else?
She done trial visits to go back to Tommy's.
Okay.
There's a process in the foster care system.
I understand.
She done weekend visits, or at first it was just visits, and then it led to weekend visits.
How'd she feel about that?
She seemed okay with it.
Eventually, was Megan placed back in the custody and care of her family?
She was. She went back to Tommy's house.
Tommy, you mean her father?
Yes,
Okay. And did you maintain contact with her?
I did.
How often?
We texted back and forth over it wasn't a daily time, but I want to say once a month, couple times sometimes couple times a week. It's just according to what was going on and what pictures she had took of Evelyn.
When you were talking to her, did you eventually learn that maybe things were kind of getting back off the tracks again?
I did. In April, I received a call from her foster care worker saying that Megan had been needed some help, and would, even though she had was out of the foster care system, would I be willing to go and help her out? And I said, no problem. So I called Megan. She told me that her mother had dropped her off at a church. She had drove off and left her and Evelyn there. She had took Evelyn's diaper bag, the baby's supplies. So I told her I'd be right there. I went and picked her up. We went to Walmart, bought baby bottles, formula, diapers, the stuff that a baby would need.
Where did you take her?
We went back to my home. She spent the night. Her and Evelyn they took showers, a good night's sleep. But then the next morning, she wanted to go back to her mother's family's home.
Where's that at?
Now, I'm not sure. The place that I took, her grandfather was in the hospital, and she wanted to go there to meet up with her family. So when she left my home, I drove her to the hospital in Kingsport, and she assured me that she would be perfectly fine, and her and Evelyn got out.
It'd be fair to say that Megan wasn't getting maybe the familial support from her parents that she was needing at that time.
Yes.
I imagine over this time, Ms. Kite, that did you ever meet Tommy Boswell Sr. or her mother, Angela?
I had never met Angela, but I'd met Tommy several times.
You said you agreed that she probably come from a dysfunctional family. Let me ask you this. She lived with you for 4 months and you stayed in contact with her after she moved out. It's your opinion, you know her, you talked to her. You think Megan ever knew what a normal family looked like?
No. No.
Did she crave that?
I think so.
Was she wanting that for Evelyn?
I think so.
Well, it's obvious why we're here today. You know why you're testifying. Are you asking this jury to just give her life?
With the possibility of parole. This child has been traumatized. She's made bad mistakes that has to be paid for. But I think she deserves a chance to come back out to the real world. I don't think she's irredeemable. I think she can become a functioning citizen.
Ms. Scott, I thank you again. If you would answer the questions that the state has for you.
Nothing from the state judge.
Judge, we call Mary Boswell.
Take your time.
Raise your right hand and state your name for me.
Mary Boswell.
Ms. Boswell, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Can I see you up here and speak in that microphone?
Okay.
Ms. Boswell, I'm Gene Scott. How are you?
Pretty good.
We're here today because the jury's trying to decide how long Megan will have to stay in prison. I want you to, your name is Mary Boswell.
Not Mary Boswell.
Okay. How do you know Megan?
Sir,
How do you know Megan?
she's my granddaughter.
Okay. Are you Tommy Boswell's mother?
Yes, sir.
And obviously you've known Megan her whole life.
All of her life, I started keeping her from the time she was 2 months old till she was grown, off and on, not all the time, but off and on.
Why was that in part because of problems between your son and her mother, Angela?
Sir,
Was that because her parents were having
no,
problems?
she just loved me and her papa, and she stayed with us, and we loved her, and so we keep her a lot.
Were you aware of the violence issues between Tommy and Angela?
No, I didn't live in their home or nothing. I don't know nothing about what went on in their home, sir.
Okay.
We'd pick her up and keep her till she want to go back and like that, off and on.
And have you always lived down there on the same property Tommy lives on? Or?
I've now lived there for maybe 20 years, 21 or 2 or something like that.
She lived there almost all Megan's life.
Yeah, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. And you're aware, you told me, I think one of Megan's role models was your husband, your late husband.
Sir,
Your late husband, he was one of Megan's role models?
yes, we loved her like she belonged to us.
Okay. And, When did he pass, ma'am?
11 and a half years ago, soon to be 12 this summer.
So it would have been when Megan was, I guess, what,
Maybe 12 years old or
12
something.
years old?
Mhm.
Did you see that take an impact on her?
Yes, it did.
And are you here asking this jury for leniency today?
Yes, sir, I am.
Asking them not to give her a sentence of life without parole?
I hope they don't, sir. I love her like she's, I hope they don't give her the sentence like that. I'd love to give her my home if I could take her home today. That's how much I love her.
I understand. Thank you, Ms. Boswell. Is there any Mr. Harper or Ms. Massey?
No questions, Judge.
Ms. Boswell, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm leaving.
Thank you for going down there.
Can I sit down here then?
She can set my subject for recall. You're welcome to stay in Portland.
Okay, thank you.
We approach.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you go with the officer for just a minute. It won't take long. Everyone
One
stand.
second, please.
You may be seated. Thank you.
Approach.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Scott.
Megan, we've talked about this before. You understand you have a right not to testify.
Yes,
No one can force you to testify.
yes.
We'll start this over since we didn't have the microphone up. Megan, you understand you have a right not to testify, and if you don't testify, the jury may not draw any inferences from that failure to testify. You understand that?
Yes,
Likewise, you have a right to testify. No one can keep you from testifying if you wanted to.
yes,
After consulting with me, Mr. Ford, and talking about your case and hearing what's happened here in court and all the evidence, do you wish to testify or not?
no,
You do not wish to testify?
I do not wish to testify.
And Ms. Boswell, you're still under oath from yesterday or the day before. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any other proof? And before we bring the jury in, one thing that I forgot to do yesterday, when we excused the alternates, I took the contents of one of their books and the cover page, and I gave that to the court reporter, and that would be designated as Exhibit A, the letter A, for identification only, so that it's part of the record as to what those notebooks were. All right. Does he have copies?
Now live, we are not sure exactly what happened. We just lost. Okay, we're getting our speed back into the courtroom here in just a moment. We were
Just stay with us. We will certainly be getting
okay.
up and
We're
moving as quickly as
control room is telling us right now if we lost our feet out of the courtroom there. We're going to go back in there as we can. We've been watching testimony. This is the sentencing phase of Megan Boswell. Of course, she was convicted just about an hour or so ago at this point. Now, the defense has been calling witnesses. We saw her mother, her former foster mom, and her grandmother was all testifying. And it's a pool camera feed. There's one camera that is being operated. Everyone, whether you're watching it in stream or we're here on the air, it's all one feed coming in and out. One camera out of the courtroom. It's not ours, so we're kind of at the mercy of what's happening with that feed. We kind of lost it. They were
looks
working
like
on
the
that.
judge may have ordered it down just because of some proprietary information being shown.
And we've seen that if you followed along with us on our stream, on our YouTube, we've had this up the entire time. We've seen that come down. We've seen the sound come down, even in the verdict being read there. At times, the judge has asked that to be cut off and not be seen or not to be heard. We saw that when they announced the verdict earlier this morning. We couldn't hear the jury, so and partially to keep us from seeing and hearing them, and so we don't know anything about the jury. So that's why we didn't hear them this morning with the foreman as they announced the verdict. And I believe
sound, we can hear sound.
we're
It sounds
hearing
like
some
we're getting it
sound
back up.
coming through our ear.
Guys, what are you seeing?
The control room hasn't. Okay, so they're just watching some video there. So just to recap here, if you've just joined us, the graphic behind us kind of tells us exactly what's going on. Megan Boswell found guilty on all 19 counts this morning. That is a first-degree murder. That's what we're seeing, a sentencing hearing that we've been watching that. I hear this morning, the last hour or so, that sentencing hearing for the first-degree murder conviction. Then 2 counts of felony murder. That's 1 count each for child abuse, another count for child neglect. Then aggravated child abuse and aggravated child neglect. Those were 2 separate offenses and separate indictments there, counts 4 and 5. Tampering with evidence. And then those host of false reporting charges, because we saw all throughout this trial, Rebecca, that, every story just never seemed to come together. The jury didn't buy it, and they convicted her on all 19 charges, but all those different stories, they didn't listen. They didn't believe what she was telling, and she told police, and they got the conviction on all of those.
And now that we're into the sentencing phase, what we are doing is listening to people who are asking for leniency. Now,
Yes.
leniency in this case is either life or life with parole.
And parole in Tennessee is 51 years, I believe it is. So we
she
heard
would
Gene
be
Scott
59
69,
or
70.
69 or
when she's
51
eligible.
when she's eligible.
When she's eligible at 51 years of being in prison. She's been in jail for 5 years at this point. She's never made bond in waiting trial. She's been in jail the entire time. So that's the question that the jury now gets to weigh in on. Is this life with parole or life without parole? The state did not seek the death penalty. Of course, Tennessee does have the death penalty, but they chose not to seek capital punishment in this case.
So the defense attorney, trying to elicit some sympathy with the jury, he brought in Megan Boswell's mother, who went through a litany of things that Megan faced as a child: drug abuse from both her parents, violence among the parents, and in and out of jail for both parents. And so it was a very rough time, rough childhood for this young lady. She went into foster care. The woman reported that she came in malnourished. Her head was full of lice.
And matted hair, that she couldn't even find a beautician that would be able to address how matted and thick the hair was and the lice that was in there. Finally, someone did do that. So they're trying to paint that side of Megan to the jury, as that same jury of 7 men and 5 women convicted her just an hour or 2 ago at this point. Now trying to paint a little different picture there, that they will show some leniency toward her in deciding that maybe she should be able to have a chance at parole after 51 years in prison. But that's a decision that will come at a later point, maybe later this afternoon. We're not sure. If you're wondering right now, if you've just joined us, our camera feed out of the courtroom has been stopped. The judge has asked them to stop that for the moment. They're reviewing something, looking into a couple of things there in the courtroom right now. So that's why we're not able to show you that. We have made the decision to stay with that sentencing hearing and listening to this, one of the biggest cases our region has seen in many, many years. Probably we've been at the station about the same time here, and I don't remember a case quite as dynamic as this one, just a couple.
That's right. This has been a very emotionally charged case as well, involving a child, of course it would be. And then to show all that evidence of the things that she was found in when she was found in that trash can, her little onesie and the tinfoil that was on her face. It's just a very trying time for these jurors.
And something that's going to be difficult for them to process, when they leave and go back into their lives, which they've been away from now for 7 days of trial and the time in the weekend there, that's going to carry with them. That's going to be burned into their mind of what they sat through and saw. And a very difficult thing, I would imagine, to process. Not something that I personally would want to ever have to process.
And not just the jury, community members are so invested in this case and have been following along so closely. Kristen reported yesterday that it was standing room only in the courtroom. The public is allowed to go into that courtroom. And so they've heard that evidence.
Right.
They've seen that evidence, and they have been emotionally there and involved as well. So this is just something that has been followed along by our community and across the country.
And we've seen people following the digital feed from all over the country and commenting and talking about it and they're captivated by what's happening day by day in this testimony and very invested in wanting to know what happens with that. That's why we've made the decision to carry this with you and let you know how this outcome comes once that decision is. They've kind of made the pause now as they're working with an issue that's come up in the courtroom right now. So we don't have that feed. You're not missing any testimony in that. They're working through some procedural things there in the courtroom. Once we're able to show you that again, we'll be able to put it back on. But again, we've seen 3 witnesses. Not sure if they're calling any more on the defense side. The prosecution did not call any witnesses in this phase. They quickly rested. They presented one piece of paper and rested their side because this really is a defense hearing more so than it is. They'll get an opening, and they had an opening. They'll have a closing statement as well with this as well.
I think they turned down their opening.
Yes.
And went right to Gene Scott, the defense attorney. And of course, we have a direct line to the media room where Liam Bridgman is communicating with us regularly, letting us know.
So we're not,
the latest is.
Liam's not able to see anything in the media room right now. It's from what the control room is telling us, the very fluid thing right now. So we may be, I think at the moment, it sounds like we may be going to step away here for just a moment. We don't know when this is coming back to being resolved and being able to show you anything as opposed to sitting here and listening to us for a while. We will make sure you see this. And make sure that we get this to you as soon as we know once they work out what's happening. So our feed is completely down from the courtroom. They have pulled that, so we're not able to show you that at the moment. We're trying to work out if that's going to be able to come back at the moment. So.
Okay, so Preston and I will stay right here. We have people working on this upstairs in the newsroom as we speak, so we'll figure out exactly what's going on and why it's down. And also, it is not just our camera. This is not going out anywhere. You're not by watching us thinking, oh, somebody else has that. This is a one feed coming out of that courtroom. Every place that you could possibly see this is seeing that same video. There is no video coming out of the courtroom right now. They're dealing with this legal issue of whatever has come up in that courtroom, separate from that hearing. So no hearing is progressing right now. We don't have a feed coming out. We're working through that and to see what happens with that. So, all right, let's send it back to programming right now. But what you can do is you can keep it tuned here on News 5. We will pop up as soon as we get more information and we'll be back on with it. And of course, on our YouTube page for WCYB and also our Facebook page and our website when it becomes available again. Well, we may not be leaving just as quick as we thought we were. Our control room is telling us. So again, all 19 counts that she has been convicted on. We're waiting on the sentencing hearing in that first-degree murder conviction there of whether or not she will receive life with parole or life without parole. That's the big question that will come from that. And the jury gets to weigh in on that. But none of that is happening right now because this issue has come up in this hearing. So we're waiting on that to sort through and to see what happens with that and to see when we're able to get that live video feed coming back out. All right, what are you hearing right now? Because I'm on the Orange IFB, guys, if you want to bring me up to speed as well. We're being told Megan has now left the courtroom. Okay, so at this point, it sounds like that Megan has left the courtroom. Her defense team has left the courtroom as well. Brandon, if you're able to send that over to me as well. I think we may just want to step aside for a moment. It seems like where we are, and we'll come back once we get a little bit better, once we know when we're able to put that on. We're not sure if we're able to reveal and when we'll be able to do that. What's going on in the courtroom right now. So no proceedings. So we're going to step aside so you guys not seeing this, was make this decision. We'll be back as soon as there's more of a hearing to happen.
Maybe seated, thank you.
All right. Mr. Scott, do you have any other proof?
Defendant rest.
All right. General, closing.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be pretty brief. This is obviously the second part of our trial, and the state only has to prove one additional element, the aggravating factor. And in your instructions, you will hear that the factor is if the murder was committed against a person less than 12 years of age and the defendant was 18 years of age or older. We submitted a copy of Evelyn's birth certificate, which will show that she was under the age of 12 at the time that this murder was committed. And it also gives Megan Boswell's birth date, which also proves that Megan was over the age of 18 at the time this was committed. You get to consider not just what was in this hearing today, but anything that you heard in the trial itself. You heard from a few witnesses today talk about Megan's childhood. You're going to get jury instructions on mitigating factors that the defense would like for you to consider. Things like how old Megan Boswell was at the time, Megan Boswell's childhood, the things that she witnessed, role models in her life, etc. But I submit to you that there are a lot of people who have hard childhoods. There are a lot of people who have babies when they're young, and those people do not kill their children. Those people do not wrap their children in blankets, in foil, and put them in a trash can upside down. When you look at these mitigating factors, and it looks like they have submitted 11 mitigating factors, I submit to you that lots of people have childhoods like the defendant had. But you heard from her own grandmother that her grandmother and grandfather were stability for her. And I submit to you that just because you have the childhood that you have, and of course we all, you included, have different life experiences, that does not make an excuse for what she did to Evelyn. The defense is telling you that Megan Boswell deserves life with the possibility of parole, which is essentially roughly 51 years in this state, which would mean that Megan Boswell could get out in her late 60s, I believe. I submit to you that Megan Boswell she doesn't deserve that chance. Does Evelyn get the chance when she's 69 years old to start her life again? She doesn't. Neither does Megan. We are going to ask that you continue to hold her accountable. The state has proven the aggravating factor that Evelyn was under the age of 12 years old and that the defendant was over the age of 18. We have proven that. And that is all the state has to prove. And if you believe that the state has proven that beyond a reasonable doubt, we're going to ask that you return a verdict of life without the possibility of parole.
Thank you, John. Mr. Horn.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know the last few days have been emotional for you. It's been emotional for everyone. That emotion really began 5 years ago. Not just for this case, but for our community. And it has had some dividing and rippling effects. You've been sequestered, you haven't seen those things, but we have. We've seen how divided this community is over this case. Perhaps that could last and go on for a long time. You spoke very loud today when you found Megan Boswell guilty. I think it's time that we end all of this on the right note. You have a chance to do that. I don't, state doesn't, judge doesn't, you do. You can put the defining moment, the period of what people will remember about this case, and perhaps you as jurors, because you did find her guilty. And now you have a chance to do and show the one thing that's been missing for the last 5 years. That's grace and love. We have all, everybody in this room has failed in some way in their life. It may not have resulted in a criminal charge. It may not have resulted in going to prison. But we've done something. We've wanted compassion. We've wanted grace. We've wanted love. That's how you can end this. And that's how we can start to move on as a community. And you can show her what love looks like. Because you've heard how fractured and dysfunctional her family is. Mr. Scott told you in the trial, he didn't go through a lot of things in her life. I didn't either. But I knew my mom and dad loved me. They loved me to the end. My family now loves me to the end. I don't think she's seen what that looks like in her life. You're going to get a chance. Go back there and show her. You can tell her that she's redeemable. You can end it with grace and love. General Boswell told you about those mitigating factors. You'll get them in your jury instructions. Spare her life and give her life without parole. If there's anything good can come from this, is that we can all move forward, knowing that you got the verdict that you wanted, and you ended it with the emotion of love and compassion. That's what will be remembered. I hope that's what you did. Don't be remembered for just compounding the tragedy and the tragedy and the tragedy. So easy to do that. The lasting impression that you give Evelyn, that you give Megan, that you give this community, is that love and grace can still be found with all of this. And we ask you to give her life. Let her have a chance to come out one day. That's justice as well. Justice for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you, Judge. Ladies and gentlemen, your job at this point is to determine whether or not the state has proven the aggravating factor that we alleged. And as General Massengill told you, that was simply related to the age of the child as well as the age of Miss Boswell. And Clearly through her birth certificate, we have proven that aggravating factor. So then your job will be to weigh the mitigating factors that the defense has put on for you against that aggravating factor, which we have met our burden of proving. Mr. Horns asked you to end this case on the right note, and they would agree. You should end this case on the right note, and you should show Megan Boswell the same compassion and grace that she showed Evelyn. Evelyn wasn't shown any compassion. She wasn't shown any grace. You know, the one person that Evelyn should have been able to rely on to protect her, keep her safe, abandoned her, discarded her. She doesn't deserve your passion, your grace. State asks that you weigh the aggravating factor that we've proven in this case, the fact that Evelyn Boswell, time she was dumped in a trash can, wasn't even 13 months old, never had a chance. We ask that you return a verdict we've requested of life without parole.
Thank you, General. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've got another set of instructions I've got to read to you. In the criminal court for Sullivan County, Tennessee at Blumville, State of Tennessee versus Megan Boswell, defendant. Case S-72869. Jury instructions, fixing punishment of life imprisonment or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Members of the jury, you have now found the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of first-degree murder in the perpetration of first-degree murder as charged in the first count, and first-degree murder in the perpetration of a felony as charged in the second and third counts of presentment number S-72869. It is now your duty to determine, within the limits prescribed by law, the penalty which shall be imposed as punishment for these offenses. Tennessee law provides that a person convicted of first-degree murder and first-degree murder in the perpetration of a felony shall be punished by imprisonment for life without possibility of parole or by imprisonment for life. A defendant who receives a sentence of imprisonment for life shall not be eligible for release until the defendant has served at least 51 full calendar years of such sentence. A defendant who receives a sentence of imprisonment for life without parole shall never be eligible for release. In arriving at this determination, you are authorized to weigh and consider any of the statutory aggravating circumstances proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and any mitigating circumstances which may have been risen by the evidence throughout the entire course of this trial, including the guilt finding phase or sentencing phase or both. The jury is the sole judge of the facts and of the law as it applies to the facts in this case. In arriving at your verdict, you are to consider the law in connection with the facts, but the court is the proper source from which you are to get the law. In other words, you are the judges of the law as well as the facts under the direction of the court. The burden of proof is upon the state to prove any statutory aggravating circumstance or circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is that doubt created by an investigation of all the proof in the case and an inability after such investigation to let the mind rest easily as to the certainty of your verdict. Absolute certainty is not demanded by law, but moral certainty is required, and this certainty is required as to every element of proof necessary to constitute the verdict. The law makes you, the jury, the sole and exclusive judges of the credibility of the witnesses and the weight to be given to the evidence. The defendant has not taken the stand to testify as a witness during the sentencing hearing, but you shall place no significance on this fact. The burden is on the state to prove any aggravating circumstance or circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. She is not required to take the stand in her own behalf, and her election not to do so cannot be considered for any purpose against her, nor can any inference be drawn from such fact. Statutory aggravating circumstances. Tennessee law provides that no sentence of imprisonment for life without possibility of parole shall be imposed by a jury, but upon a unanimous finding that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of one or more of the statutory aggravating circumstances, which shall be limited to the following. 1, the murder was committed against a person less than 12 years of age, and the defendant was 18 years of age or older. TCA 39-13-204I1. Members of the jury, the court has read to you the aggravating circumstance which the law requires you to consider if you find proved beyond a reasonable doubt. You shall not consider any other facts or circumstances as an aggravating circumstance in deciding whether imprisonment for life without possibility of parole